I just want to make this video about atheism and religious faith, partly catalysed by a video I looked at a couple of days ago by a lad whose username I can't remember, unfortunately. I think it ends in LP. But it's about this atheist dilemma, as he calls it, he's got, in which he's under pressure from his classmates because he's an atheist in a predominantly Christian school environment. I don't really have any particular advice to give this lad, but just in terms of my own thoughts around that. I mean, the first thing to say, I have to say, is huge respect to this chap. When I was 14, I was so wrapped up in that kind of adolescent tribalism that's around you in that age, and I couldn't, that the idea of independent thought was completely alien to me. I'd have probably joined the Nazi party if that's what my friends were doing. But that aside, I think there are some really interesting issues around atheism and religious faith. The first thing, I suppose, is to do with knowledge, really. Because certainly when I was a kid and growing up, I was Church of England. That's the notional denomination I belong to. But if you know anything about the Church of England, you'll know it's the weakest, most bland religious denomination you can possibly imagine, really. And even though I always kind of signed Church of England on forms and passport applications and all that kind of stuff, probably until I was in my mid-20s, it meant absolutely nothing. It was just like a question to do with where you'd been born or something. I didn't even think about it as a religious question, actually. It wasn't until I started getting interested in religion and reading about it from a kind of philosophical point of view that I started thinking that I better take that question a bit more seriously. But certainly one of the things I found about religious knowledge and gaining information about religion is that it's almost impossible to hold to the tenets of belief, really, that religion inquires once you've actually done your homework. You know, it's reading about how the Bible came into being, how the kind of socio-political context shaped what early Christianity, for example, looked like, how Christianity has been modified over the centuries to become what it is today, again largely by social and cultural and political forces, about how economics has played into that, about how it's been influenced by other kinds of spiritual traditions, if I can call them that, and philosophical traditions. And the whole network of other kind of discourses that are woven into and alongside religious discourse. It's absolutely fascinating history, but for me certainly it kind of reduces the simple faith of some Christians to an absurdity, really. It's certainly when I speak to I don't speak to hardline Christians very often, but when I get Jehovah's Witnesses come into my door, or when I meet evangelicals at airports or in shopping centres, I almost invariably know a lot more about their faith than they do, and that just gives me an enormous sense of confidence. Not to necessarily argue with them, that's almost inevitably hopeless, but to not take what they're saying too seriously, and not to feel as if I have to feel intellectually threatened by their superior knowledge, because they don't have it, they really don't. Or it's possible to have far greater knowledge than they do. And just on the arguing with Christians thing, really, complete waste of time in my opinion. Debates between, even the best debates between religious believers and atheists, to me they look more like rap battles than actual debates. The point doesn't seem to be to prove your point. The point seems to be just to keep going until your opponent chokes and you kind of win a victory through attrition more than through argument. So I guess that's certainly one of my approaches to what it means to be an atheist. Isn't really about discounting crappy versions of God. It's about finding out what the history of God has been, and how interesting it's been in many ways, and how it's impossible to hold a simple belief in one of those crappy two-dimensional gods when you actually know the facts, really. That's the first thing. The second thing is to do with atheism, really. This is to do with defining of your terms. Because, God is a notoriously difficult thing to define. Does God exist? Throws up a question like exist, which is again is a notoriously difficult thing to define. 2,000 years of philosophy haven't really got to the bottom of what being is, what existing is. So that's a big question. And belief is a notoriously difficult thing to define. So do you believe that God exists? It's like a really, really complex question, and it can't be answered by a yes, no. So again, if anybody's in the company of that kind of question, then it doesn't really matter what you say at that point. You can say yes, you can say no, but it's always going to be wrong or partial. And the last thing about atheism, really, and this relates also to the thing about definitions, which is to do with, it comes out of Dawkins actually, because Dawkins kind of memorably says that we're all atheists with respect to Thor, and we're all atheists with respect to Apollo and Zeus. He just goes one god further and doesn't believe in Yahweh. But of course, when Thor and Zeus and Apollo were around, Yahweh wasn't around. At least, I don't think it was anyway. Certainly the modern version of the Christian God wasn't around. It's a more modern version. It's a redefinition. It was a new understanding of what God that people could believe in. So at a certain point, the definition of God changed to allow people to believe in the version of God that kind of floats around modern Christianity, for example. And whilst I have not found any God that I'm willing to believe in all of the traditions that I've looked at, I can't discount the possibility, because it would be unreasonable to do so, I can't discount the possibility of at some point there being a definition of that term which I would sign up to. I don't know what it is, I can't imagine what it would be, but it's not beyond the bounds of possibility. So if I'm being kind of truthful to myself and honestly rational, I have to say that yes, I am an atheist, because no God fits that definition that I can see right now, but it's an atheist with a small a, in the sense that who knows, at some point in the future these difficult terms, God, exist, belief, might be satisfactorily defined, or I might find definitions myself which satisfactorily correspond to those terms that I can sign myself up to. And at that point I will be able to honestly say, yes, I do believe in God. At the moment it's just a series of sounds coming out of my mouth. Fine. Anyhow, I don't know if I've really got to that isn't advice, is it really? I don't know what the hell that is really. Anyway, that's what I'm thinking about right now.